I knew what was coming the moment he leaned against my cubicle wall like he owned the air around him. New executive. Perfect suit. The kind of polished smile that never quite reaches the eyes. Sweetheart, he said. Of course he did. He glanced at my workspace like it was temporary, like I was temporary. Then came the corporate translation wrapped in soft words. The company was evolving, moving toward a scalable future. I'd heard enough versions of that speech to know what it really meant. I was done. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from HR in a glass-walled room that felt more like an aquarium than an office. They slid a folder toward me with rehearsed sympathy. Severance package. Exit paperwork. Smiles that didn't match their eyes. My badge stopped working before I even finished signing. They handed me a tote bag with the company logo printed proudly across the front, like branding could soften the blow of being erased. As I walked back past my desk, I let my fingers brush against the spine of a worn binder. It didn't look like much, just paper, tabs, and years of notes, but it held more value than anyone in that building seemed to understand. Inside was everything. Years of relationships. Carefully mapped client networks. Personal notes you don't store in any system. The kind of trust built over early mornings, late flights, and conversations that had nothing to do with business, and everything to do with loyalty. He had called it replaceable. That was his first mistake. Some of those clients had agreements tied directly to me. Not the company. Me. Quiet clauses buried in contracts that only mattered when someone stopped paying attention. He hadn't read that far. Most people don't. Back at my desk, my monitor still had a sticky note I'd left there years ago. A reminder from a different fight, a different executive who tried something similar. Check the clause. I smiled when I saw it. Because I already knew how this would unfold. I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. People like him mistake silence for defeat. It isn't. Silence is calculation. By the time I stepped outside, the air felt different. Cleaner. The security guard gave me a quiet nod, the kind reserved for people who didn't deserve what just happened. I nodded back and kept walking. In my head, everything was already lining up. Contracts. Timelines. Names. Patterns. They thought they'd replaced me. What they actually did was remove the only thing holding everything together. And they were about to find out what that really meant. By the time I got home, I already knew how they'd handle my accounts. People like him always follow the same playbook. Big announcements. Clean slides. One-size-fits-all solutions dressed up as strategy. A couple of days later, confirmation came through an old contact still inside. A single webinar. Mass emails written like press releases. No calls. No personal check-ins. No effort to understand the people behind the contracts. Just noise. That's when I knew it wouldn't take long. The first client didn't explode. They didn't argue. They didn't complain. They simply left. A clean, professional message sent through the proper channels. Polite, precise, and final. The kind of message that reads like a legal formality but carries the weight of a door quietly closing. They cited a clause most people forget exists. A clause tied to me. That account alone had taken years to build. Not with presentations or automated touchpoints, but with presence. Showing up when it mattered. Remembering details no system tracks. Solving problems before they became problems. Now it was gone. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, gone. I laughed when I heard. Not because it was funny, but because it was inevitable. That account was never loyal to a logo. It was loyal to consistency. To trust. To someone who understood the difference between a transaction and a relationship. And I wasn't there anymore. That night, I stood in my kitchen, letting the quiet settle around me. No office noise. No meetings. No pressure. Just clarity. I didn't need to make calls. I didn't need to warn anyone. The structure was already in place, and the timing was already set. Those contracts weren't just agreements. They were tripwires. Each one designed to trigger the moment the wrong decision was made. And that decision had already been made for them. I could almost picture the executive team trying to explain it away. Calling it expected churn. Blaming the transition. Pretending it was under control. That's what amateurs do. They narrate the problem instead of fixing it. But this wasn't a problem you could talk your way out of. This was something slower. Something quieter. A slow bleed. And it had just started. The second client didn't take long. Their message was even shorter. No extra words. No hesitation. Same reason. Same clause. Same outcome. Another major account, gone with a single decision. I remembered building that one from the ground up. Long conversations. Careful negotiations. Moments where walking away would have been easier, but staying made it stronger. That's the thing about real relationships. They aren't built quickly, but they can disappear instantly when mishandled. The third didn't even wait. They exited early. No patience. No interest in seeing how things would settle. They already knew. Inside the company, I heard it was chaos. Meetings stacked on meetings. Urgent plans that solved nothing. Leadership scrambling to control something they didn't fully understand. Because they were asking the wrong question. They thought they were losing accounts. What they were actually losing was trust. And trust doesn't respond to strategy decks. It responds to people. That's when they reached out to me. Not politely. Not carefully. Just a blunt request dropped into my inbox, asking for the same materials they'd relied on for years. Scripts. Frameworks. Systems. The same things they had dismissed as replaceable. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled up my own records. Agreements. Emails. Documentation. Everything was exactly where I left it. Clear. Organized. Intentional. Because this wasn't something I had thrown together. It was something I had built. Carefully. Deliberately. Unprotected. Then my phone rang. The number was familiar. I let it ring once before answering. The voice on the other end didn't waste time. It came in strong, direct, already assuming control of the conversation. But I let them talk. Because sometimes the fastest way to shift control is to let the other person believe they already have it. When they finished, I gave them one simple response. Let's read the agreement together. Silence. Not confusion. Recognition. The kind that comes right before someone realizes they've stepped into something they don't fully understand. And that's when everything started to change. The meeting was labeled urgent. Mandatory attendance. That told me everything I needed to know. I accepted without comment, but I made one thing clear in my reply. Legal needed to be there. No shortcuts. No side conversations. No misunderstandings. If they wanted this discussion, it would happen properly. That morning, I dressed simply. Nothing loud. Nothing distracting. Calm always carries more weight than force. When I walked into the room, the atmosphere was already tense. Too cold. Too quiet. The kind of silence filled with unspoken pressure. They were all there. Leadership. HR. The same executive who had dismissed me days earlier. He looked confident. He shouldn't have. The meeting started exactly how I expected. Strong words. Controlled tone. Attempts to frame the situation in their favor. I let it happen. Then, when there was a pause, I placed the agreement on the table. Let's go through it. Slowly. Carefully. I guided their attention to the sections that mattered. Not by explaining them, but by letting them read. Because words carry more weight when they are discovered, not delivered. At first, it was routine. Then it wasn't. You could see the shift happen in real time. The moment understanding replaced assumption. Posture changed. Expressions tightened. Silence deepened. No one interrupted. They kept reading. And the more they read, the clearer it became. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't negotiable. This was already decided, the moment they made their move. I didn't rush them. I didn't push. I just let the realization settle. Because moments like that don't need pressure. They carry their own. Finally, someone spoke. Not with authority. Not with confidence. Just a simple question. What happens now? I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make the weight of it clear. Then I placed two options in front of them. Clean. Direct. Final. No emotion. No hostility. Just outcomes. Because by that point, it wasn't personal anymore. It was structure. It was consequence. And most importantly, it was already in motion.